Today on Mild versus Wild,
I've got $80,000.
and I've got $115,000.
And we're both building super stock Cummins pulling engines.
So we're here in Atlantic, Pennsylvania to visit Apex Diesel. Hey guys, we're here at Apex Diesel Performance in Atlantic, Pennsylvania, which is north of Youngstown, Ohio, and roughly between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. If you don't know Apex Diesel, let us get you up to speed. The diesel engine and machine shop is owned by Dustin Harrison, who opened Apex in 2014. Obsessed with making everything he touched faster, better, and louder, Dustin and his team at Apex Diesel build some awesome diesel engines.
Operating out of an 8,700 square foot facility, Apex is strictly dedicated to diesel engine work and machining. The shop does high performance sled pulling and drag racing work, as well as turbo work, and their focus is nearly 100% Cummins engines, such as the 12 valve, 24 valve, and common rail setups, with 5.9 and 6.7 liter being the most common builds.
And that's exactly why we're here. We're looking to build a pair of super stock Cummins engines. In this episode, our mild budget is $80,000 and our wild budget is $115,000, which should both make for some incredible Cummins builds.
Now, once we break down what goes into each build, we'll compare them for horsepower and torque, dollars per horsepower, durability, competitiveness, and ease of upgrading to see what build comes out on top. All right, let's go see Apex Diesel and talk with Dustin Harrison.
All right, guys, well, we're happy to be in out of the cold, and we are joined by Dustin Harrison, owner of Apex Diesel. Dustin,
Nice
great
to
to
meet
see
you.
you. Yeah.
Nice
Good
meeting
seeing
you,
you.
Dustin, in person. I know I did a Diesel of the Week with you a few months back. It's a pleasure to be in the shop.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here in person and get to see what you guys are doing here, because it's a lot of really cool diesel Cummins work, and we're excited to see it.
Yeah, happy to have you guys.
So tell us a little bit about, why diesel and what you guys do here at Apex.
Truck pulling got me into diesels. Boy, it was when I first got into it, diesel trucks were just becoming a thing, and programmers, it was just coming about. And I got my first truck, and it just happened to be a diesel, had a chip on it, and it was just amazing the power that you could gain off of something just by a little electronic device. And I've been a gearhead my whole life, and playing with screws and working on this, working on that. Next thing you know, take it to a truck pull, break something, fix it, build it up, and it just kind of progressed from there. And started doing, like we talked earlier, started doing work for other people on the side, and just even little stuff here and there.
Very cool.
And that's where we're at today.
Yeah, and you were telling us off camera that you're just a couple months away from a 10-year anniversary here. That's awesome.
Yep, 10-year anniversary in January.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very good. And so tell the folks, about how many square feet. I believe it's a little over 8,000 square foot shop.
Yeah, we're a little over 8,000 square feet today.
Very good. And how many employees are helping you out?
We got four employees, plus my wife in the office. Most people that call, that's who you're going to talk to Dana.
Yeah, awesome. Very good. And, you said that you guys specialize in Cummins, but will you guys, do anything else in terms of other platforms, or is Cummins really the thing?
Drive-in work, which is, like we talked earlier, probably 20-25% of what we do. It's not a big part. We're kind of slowly getting away from that. Yeah. Mainly Cummins, Power Stroke. We do a little bit of Duramax work. Not a lot, but we do all three: repair, performance, engine build, stuff like that. It's all Cummins.
Yeah. Very good. And well, like I said, we're really excited to see the shop, so I'm going to hand it over to you. Let us, let you show us around. We'll kind of follow your lead.
Let's go.
And this is primarily, like you said, your drive-in area here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Drive in, and then customers that we pull their engines out that we're going to dyno, or one that we're rebuilding engines. That's pretty much what we keep. Parts, used parts and some of the other stuff. This is pretty much everything that stays on this side. Some of the dirtier stuff, the cleaning, our hot tank. And then as you come back here, the cylinder and block resurfacer, cylinder head, and our surfacer for like manifolds, cast iron manifolds. Back in the day, they used to surface cylinder heads on them. But just with surface finishes nowadays, you got to have extremely low RA finish.
Right.
So we'll do, like header flanges, intake manifolds, exhaust manifolds, stuff like that. This is our dyno room.
Oh, nice.
So we could just put it on the cart, drive them straight in. So currently this is a 2.6 smoothbore engine, truck pulling engine.
Okay.
Nice. Electronic common rail injection, 6.7 Cummins base. This is a really popular class. It's pretty affordable, and you still make decent power. They don't break a lot of driveline parts. Guys that have been into pulling for a handful of years, there's a lot of guys in this class that have been around it for a while. But it's still, like I said, it's enough horsepower that it's fun.
Sure.
But it's still kind of affordable. So we kind of we got a bunch of different couplers, and we could do different turbo sizes, different exhaust flanges, different intercooler setups, which we've dynoed a bunch of different intercooler setups just to see horsepower gains, what works, what doesn't. And it's nice, every engine that we build goes on the dyno. Right here, this would be the engine room, assembly room.
And then you were saying earlier too that the engine room is kind of your domain as well as the dyno room.
Yeah.
You're hanging out back here.
I don't work on trucks anymore. About 5 years ago, I quit doing any. I still talk to the customers. Pretty much everybody that comes through. That way you get a good feedback. Right. Like she talks to everybody, but I still like connecting with the customer too.
Sure. How many builds will you get through in a typical month or a year? How many engines are kind of coming through the shop?
Well, like we talked earlier, it depends on the year, or depends on the month, and the time of year.
Yeah.
So like this time of year, we got a lot of the stuff caught up. But now competition season is pretty much drag racers, truck pullers, dirt draggers, all that stuff has kind of come to an end. So there's, we really get slammed in January, February, a lot of guys
leading up to next
the
season.
spring, summer or early summer. So like this month would probably be not to say slowest month, but would be the least amount you would do, and it's probably one a week. Is what I would say. Okay. At the busiest, you'd probably be 2 to 3 a week. So, and then, like I said, that depends, what's coming in with drive-in work too. Right. Street trucks. At summertime, more guys are more likely to, more miles you drive, you're more likely to break something, blow something up, hurt something. Right. And then competition season, same thing. Summertime though, hopefully everybody has their truck going down the track. Yeah. And hopefully they're not breaking and coming back. But stuff still happens. Once they leave here, we don't expect to see them for about 2 years, 2 seasons.
So Dustin, was this an addition that you guys did, or was this part of the property when you started?
Yeah, this was added on about 5 years ago. Yeah, we did the addition in the back, the dyno in the engine room, after we weren't, maybe a year. Wow. And then we added this on, probably 5 years ago.
Okay.
Give us a lot more space for the machines, and then all the machining stuff takes place over here.
Now, are you guys strictly a Haas shop, or you guys got a couple different things?
Currently, Yep. Nice. We've had pretty good luck with them. I haven't had too much trouble. We just got rid of, that VF4 is actually a brand new machine. We just got that last month and a half ago. And I had a VF5 that was 20 years old that we sold it, got that one. And same thing, it was a really good machine. I mean, it was just getting outdated. It was getting old and trying to keep tighter tolerances on stuff, better surface finish. It's time for a new one. But yeah, we've had, and our local factory outlet is not too far away. Okay. And they're pretty quick, you know, for getting here, for doing other things and setting stuff up. And
well, yeah, I definitely want to take a closer look here in a second, but it's hard to ignore the big pulling truck right here in front of us.
This is mine. Yeah, this is, boy, this has been a work in progress for a couple of years. We had a 3.0 truck, which some people might not know. We had a 3.0 truck for 2 years, and we had a customer reach out to us last spring, and they wanted an engine built and a chassis built. They wanted to go pulling that summer, and it's probably not going to happen. Yeah. And they made an offer in the truck, so we ended up selling that truck. Yeah. So now I have to get this done. Yeah. So very cool. It's 100% from the ground up, tube chassis frame, tilt body, fiberglass body. The engine, we'll probably start on the engine here probably by the end of the month. Hopefully have it in the truck by end of January. Then we get everything buttoned up on that, get the wrap done, and hopefully it sees the track in the spring. This is all the turbo stuff here, pretty much turbo side. A lot of spare turbo parts, turbo assembly room there.
Do you want to walk through there?
Yeah, if you want to. It's pretty tight. Yeah, you get a quick view in here anyhow. This is our turbo balancer, which this was a really nice addition. So we can low speed balance the assembly, a complete assembly, so we can assemble the cartridge, and low speed balance on this side, and then high speed balance on this side with so it actually comes through, this snout goes on, and you can spin them depending on how small, how big. We can spin them up to 200,000 RPMs. Wow. Just right there. Yeah. Everything likes being balanced. Yeah. Right. Everything lives longer. Engines, crankshafts, everything.
That's cool.
These are some of our deck plate rods, and we keep them, same thing. These we try to keep balanced within plus or minus 2 grams. So then when engine builders or us on their end, when they go to balance the assembly, everything's a lot closer.
Sure.
Dustin, earlier you mentioned you guys are starting to make more and more products. Are rods something you guys do in-house, or is that stuff that you'll...
Yeah, we don't do the forgings, obviously, but we do all the finish work, pin bushings, big end, small end, torque them, and then we try to keep all sets recorded, so the small end, big end, and then our center to center distance, and we try to keep that within like 0.2 if we can. So that's more than acceptable.
And is there a specific machine that you guys use for the rods?
Either of those two, either the TM or the VF4. Yep. So depending on what we have going. And then if we need to finish a lot of them, we can get a good enough surface finish on the that we don't even have to hone them. If we hit our number,
good to go.
Right on. Yep. We don't even have to hone them. But sometimes you got to run them through and just touch them up. So the lathe, we'll start with the small lathe. These are These are going to be billet velocity stacks, so for going on the front of those air kills. Or some guys will just put them right on the front of the turbo, just as a, you know, almost like this.
Yeah.
Velocity stack inlet. All the turbo covers get cut on here. Velocity stack, little trinkety parts that we need to turn. Anything that's round. Yeah. Wrist pins, we do some tool steel wrist pins. So they get done between this machine and the UMC. Bridgeport, we got to have an old school bridge. We got one over there, which it's just a fancy drill press, but there's sometimes where you just need to float a hole in something, or you got to put a quick chamfer, or you just need to do something and everything else is tied up, and you could just.
I don't think I've been in a shop that hasn't had a
before. Yeah, I mean, they're just handy as can be.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I think everybody's got one of them. This is our mock-up engine. So most of the parts that we make, well, we make these billet front covers too. Everything gets kind of test fitted on this. It's just a junk block and a junk head that was cracked, but it's nice to, you know, you need to kind of test the stuff out before you try to sell it to somebody and say, I'll give you a discount if you want to be the guinea pig, and it won't even fit in the truck, and it gets sent back and you made 5 of them, and yeah. Which a lot of stuff we try to run ourselves or use it before we sell it anyhow. Even if it's something that we know fits, I'd still feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, you get your own guarantee on it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. The UMC, so this is a 5-axis mill. A lot of trinkety, you can do a lot of trinkety part. We do, like today, he's gonna cut some pistons, put valve reliefs in these pistons here. There's some right there. Wrist pins, like I said, we do some of the wrist pin operations on this. It can get pretty noisy over here.
I bet, yeah.
You know, if you're facing on there and you're pocketing on this one and you got the lathe going.
Rocking and rolling.
Yeah, you get a lot of, I mean, it makes a lot of racket.
Dustin, that was an awesome tour. It's cool to see everything you guys got going on here. But, you know, Kyle and I came down here for the, you know, those mild and wild Cummins builds, super stock stuff. So we'd love to chat with you one-on-one about each of our builds here.
Yep, let's dive in.
All right, cool.
Let's do it. All right, it's time to talk about our mild build for this 6.7 Super Stock Cummins. We've got $80,000 to spend on this engine. Dustin, let's just jump right into some of these parts. Let's talk about maybe top-end engine parts first. What are you using here on this $80,000 build?
So we're going to use a factory thickness Hamilton recast cylinder head. For your budget, we can still make really good power with them. They hold up, not as long as a billet cylinder head, but you can still make really good power with them. They're in your budget range. It should pair nicely with the factory cast block with a deck plate on it. Dual valve springs, titanium retainers, keepers. You're both going to get the same valves. Inconel valves. We run Inconel valves, and at that power level, that's what you need to hold, you know, to hold them up. So yeah, moving on from there, both going to get a diamond billet piston. We've had really good luck with it. We have never, well, knock on wood, we've never had a piston issue to where we could point and say this piston failed, cracked. We've had a few that melted, but injector issues, nozzle stuck open, so on and so forth. Believe it or not, factory 6.7 crankshaft. Okay. We still use, even in the billet engine today, we're still using a factory 6.7 crankshaft. Yep.
Very cool.
For what they cost, we just don't have any failures with them. that's not related to something else happening, obviously. But at this power level, anything can happen. Just, you know, one little thing, stuff can go south pretty quick.
Very true, very true.
Yeah.
Any other important parts maybe on the bottom end, top end, maybe that we
So
missed?
we're gonna go, this being a factory cast block with a deck plate, we're gonna go with power bore sleeve. We use power bore for all of our sleeves. Ductile iron sleeve. 4125 bore, that way, so we don't have to take as much meat out of the block, out of the parent bore, but we can still retain a really thick sleeve.
Sure.
Just for strength. We've gone larger, you can, but like I said, you got to sacrifice one or the other.
Right.
Because you're not altering the bore spacing, it's factory block. You either got to take more meat out of the block or you got to go with a thinner sleeve. So at this power level, cubic inches, we would probably gain a little bit more going to a larger cubic inch, but being in an inducer, well, you're not limited on the inducer of the turbo. We can just cram some more boost in it, turn the fuel up, put a little more. So you're going to be running a big single, like a 4.6, which comes out to like 116 millimeters, I believe.
It's a pretty big turbo for the budget, yeah.
That's enough. You can make 3,000 horsepower pretty easily. Drivability that's the biggest thing. Drivability is not the best with a single, but you can have just as much fun. And a lot of guys still do.
3,000 horsepower is not messing around.
That's right.
You're getting a good ride out of that.
So, like I was saying, this being a factory cast block, we're not going to use the factory main cap. We're going to go to a billet steel main cap, and we're still going to use our girdle.
Sure.
But the thing with a billet steel main cap, we can then kind of put a little bit of a register into the block, machine the edges of the block, get it in there so you got a little more lateral support as well. And then also we get 100% cap engagement with the bottom of the girdle.
Right.
So that just ties the whole bottom end together really well. Whereas opposed to the billet blocks, they have cross-bolted mains, so we don't have to run a girdle, but they run a bit larger cap, billet cap, and they're cross-bolted. Same size studs, we're doing a 14 millimeter on the top, 14 millimeter on the bottom. On the fuel side, for your power level and the amount of fuel that you're gonna need, we would use a 15 millimeter Sigma pump.
Gotcha.
Cost-wise, it saves just between that and the other pump. Just on the injection pump, you're gonna save $6,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's good for
there's a lot of money.
Mild budget, yeah. Very cool.
And you can even turn them up. That's a Hypermax. We use Hypermax for all the Sigma pumps.
Sure.
You can make even more power with them. You just draw the duration of the injection event out.
Gotcha.
So it's not as crisp. And both engines, you're going to get our billet 1 inch longer deck plate rod. So super strong. You're not going to have to worry about these. As long as you don't spin a bearing, that's about the only way guys tear them up.
Sure.
Or if something else lets loose in the motor.
Gotcha. We're talking about power a lot with this build, around 3,000 horses. Torque, what are we talking about maybe on torque here for this engine?
So torque is the killer, and that will tear them up.
Sure.
Especially this being a cast block. So we're going to try to stay away from a big torque number. 3,000. If you're making 3,000 horse, we'd like you to make 3,000 foot-pounds. So if you keep it turning, which these going down the track, they'll turn 6,200 RPMs. If you don't want to, a lot of guys want to kind of pull them down, really lug them. Well, that's where you start getting to that that big torque number.
Right.
And that's where these blocks, the weak point of these blocks is right from the cam tunnel to the top of the main web, and they will literally split in half. The top of this block will split from the bottom.
So using the factory block here automatically is going to take that durability down, at least compared to the wild build, just a little bit.
Yes, yep.
Let's talk about the cylinder head here, Dustin, for the mild build. What are we getting into with that?
So for your budget, we would stay with a recast cylinder head, whether that's a Hamilton, Wagler. The Hamilton's going to probably be in your price range. We could still get good flow numbers. It's just like the block. It's still a cast block. So longevity, they crack between the valves. They crack from the injector bore to the valve, which it's just part of motorsports. Everything's got a life expectancy.
Sure.
So it's just like pistons. They're not going to last forever before they need sleeves. Same thing. Everything's got a life expectancy. So at your budget, we can still get pretty close to 300 CFM out of that head, which for that small of a valve, this size engine, the bore spacing and everything, that's still a really good number. And like I said, they hold up reasonably well. I mean, you can expect 3-4 seasons out of it.
Nice. Even on the mild budget. Very cool. Any other fueling components, maybe oil, whatnot, that we could talk about for the mild build?
Fuel injectors, size, both going to be about the same, 5x39. So that relates to the hole. So there's 5 holes, 39 thousandths large would be the orifice size. We use Scheid diesel for pretty much all the fuel injection side stuff. So it's going to be a billet body injector, more reliable. You don't have to worry about the body bulging or splitting or
Sure.
anything like that. Yeah, we don't have much trouble out of the injector side of stuff. Fuel pumps or injectors for that matter. Pretty reliable.
Awesome. I see you also have some AMSOIL on the workbench here. Maybe what weight of oil would you recommend for this mild build and the Super Stock class?
Most of these straight 50 weight. Yep, guys are running a straight 50, and that's what we recommend. For the bearing clearances, because we open them up substantially, there's just a lot going on. You know, bores don't stay perfectly round. Connector, you know, we open up the pin bore. Well, that's another thing. We'll run a DLC coated tool steel wrist pin.
Sure.
But we'll add about probably a thou on the pin bore, extra clearance. And over factory clearances on the rods and the mains, same thing. We go an extra thou to thou and a half. So you need that heavier oil. Plus there's that's just that much more oil film that you have for a cushion. External oiling system will go to an external wet sump oiling system. And then you can dial the pressure in just right where we need it. Higher volume, pressure, everything. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Dustin, thanks for telling me about this mild build. A lot of bang for the buck here with this $80,000 budget.
A lot of fun for the buck.
That's true. Hey, again, 3,000 horsepower is not messing around.
Yeah.
A lot of fun you can have there with that. Let's talk a little bit about the competitiveness of this mild build in the Super Stock class. Where would you expect this to maybe perform in the Super Stock class, and how well?
Depending on the track conditions, these can be extremely competitive. Horsepower, it's just like everything. Horsepower is not always the answer. If you don't have the traction to hook up, or you're on a bad track that night, I've seen these guys, single charger, lower horsepower, I've seen them win. Now, when you're on it, everybody's on a good track, equal playing field, this is going to put you, towards the front.
Sure.
You'll be a top 5 truck, top 3. But like I said, it's a driver's class for sure. You're on a bad track one night, or somebody gets to bouncing a little bit, like we looked at earlier with the cut tires.
Yeah.
On my truck over there. Air pressure, it's a big thing. Guys don't get their air pressure just right one night, and they get to you know, the truck kind of gets to lunging, bouncing a little bit. And these guys right here, they hook right in and they get around them. And, you know, it's like I said, you can, for the money, you can have a lot of fun and be really competitive with these setups. I mean, these are what I ran for big single, factory block, deck plate. These are what I ran for years, and I had fun.
Yeah, who wouldn't? I mean, it's a great build for the price. Now, say someone maybe wants to put a little more money into the engine down the road after they get this build. How easy is this to upgrade, and maybe what upgrades would you recommend on this mild build?
So your next big step, you could do a twin turbo setup for drivability.
Sure.
For the money, that would probably be your best upgrade. So you're another charger, a little bit different piping. That would probably be what I would say would be your first upgrade, would be another turbo. Injection pump, going to the next size bigger on the injection pump. You could upgrade the cylinder head. That would be at the point of failure. You get to the point to where you come in for a refresh and the head's just loaded up with cracks. At that point, spend a little bit more money, put a billet head on it. And then once you got everything, bore size is the same between the two. So we'll run the same pistons, injectors, injection system, the front case. A lot of your bolt-on components are going to be the same. It gets to that point. These fatigue over time, so the casting fatigues over time. That's the other thing. So some guys say every couple seasons the block should be sold or used in a lower horsepower application.
Gotcha.
I would say every 3-4 seasons, that's not a bad idea. So if you get to that point, it's time for a refresh and we say, hey, we need to change the block out for another block or time to upgrade to a billet. So the first order of business I'd say is put a second turbo on it. Yeah. And then fuel system, cylinder head, possibly the block.
All right, Dustin, well, thank you for telling me about this mild build. A lot of bang for the buck here. Very fun ride with 3,000 horsepower. Should be a pretty good truck, I would say, out there doing sled pulls. So send it on over to Greg here. Talk a little bit more about the wild build. Can't wait to see what you got.
All right, guys, so now it's my turn to walk through this wild build. You know, Kyle's build was cool and all, but it's not this. As you can see here, we already got a billet block sitting in front of us, and Dustin, I've got a little bit bigger budget here to play with, $115,000. So let's walk through a little bit about what's going to go into this build. Obviously, the billet block's the foundation this time, but what are some of those other differences that we're going to be getting into?
Yeah, this is a nice piece. This, like you said, this is the starting point of it here. So biggest thing between the two, other than the block, is bigger injection pump. We're going to a 17 millimeter injection pump, a little more fuel, 2 turbos, more boost. You can run a little bit more fuel, a larger volume of air, and better drivability. So it's kind of the best. It's the best of everything. But for your price range, that's what we're looking at.
And so you mentioned the turbos. Are we running that same 4.6 size turbo?
We would go to a larger primary.
Okay.
You'd go to a 5-inch primary, 5-inch to a 5.1 on the primary. And your secondary, we would actually size back a little bit. So we'd go to a 4.1.
Okay.
We have some guys that run the 4.6 as a primary, a 4.6 and a 3.9. They work pretty good. But what we found is you can make a little more power, about the same, better drivability, and you can back off you don't have to run that as hard. You don't have to cram as much boost out of that. Yeah. You can kind of make them a little more reliable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, so those are some of the bigger differences. Again, the block being one of those two. Let's walk through some of the components that are going to go inside this, starting with the bottom end. Now, I know you mentioned on Kyle's build you were using the stock 6.7 crank still. Anything different with what we're gonna be doing here inside the billet block?
Believe it or not, still factory crankshaft,
Okay.
factory 6.7 crankshaft. We have talked to like Windbird about billet cranks, and believe it or not, they try to steer you away because the factory Cummins crankshaft is. I've been in.
You can't kill it.
Yeah, well, I've been in business 10 years, and I've been truck pulling, monkeying around with diesels for close to 20, and I've seen one crankshaft break in my life.
Wow.
In my career with diesels.
Yeah.
And it was from a separate issue, a dampener issue. Bolts come loose and the harmonics, like we talked earlier, the harmonics, it broke it right on the back of the #1 journal.
Yeah.
So, you know, if it's not broke, don't fix it, is the way we look at it. And they're machining, the journal sizes, the finish, they're whoever they have make them for them, they're just a really good, and anybody that does crankshafts will tell you the same thing. It's just a really well made crankshaft, and they're extremely well balanced from the factory, which is very surprising for a low RPM engine from the factory.
Very good.
So yeah, this engine, you're going to be full roller camshaft, roller rockers, same oiling system, external wet sump. You could do a dry sump too. We do them both ways. It seems like
Do you see you guys have a preference there, or?
The biggest thing is what you can fit. Some guys don't have as much room. You don't have clearance, and the dry sump fits a lot better. You know, the dry sump pan, you're only adding 2 inches. Yeah, 2 inches to the bottom.
Yep.
But with dry sump comes a lot more plumbing. You got to run an external tank up on the front. You got lines. You have a lot more scavenge lines coming off the side. So there's just a little bit more. There's just a little bit more that goes with it, you know, as well as. So if you can't fit them like a lot of, like on the big truck there, depending on where the engine's positioned and what front axle you're running, how big it is, sometimes guys can't clear a big sump because you got to have enough capacity to oil the engine at a high RPM, and you have a lot of oil in the rest of the motor. You don't want to run the sump dry because then bad things happen.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
for sure.
Same thing, you're going to get billet rod 1 inch longer. This has the 1 inch deck plate. They both do.
Yeah.
Both getting the billet rods. Diamond pistons, like we talked about earlier, solid option.
Yeah, and you were saying the bore is the same too?
Yep, these are 4125 bore 2.
Okay.
Like we were talking, strength, the strength to power ratio, we probably could go a little bit bigger, but without altering the bore spacing, which isn't allowed in any truck pulling application that I'm aware of with any organization. As you can see, the sleeves are machined to where the flange is actually mated. Yep, seat to seat. So if we could alter the bore spacing, you get a little more meat in there, we might go to a larger, then you can get a larger valve, get a larger intake valve in there. But until then, these just work.
Yeah. Then you were mentioning the sleeve. I assume this is the same sleeve that would be in Kyle's mild build. Do you guys do anything different in terms of machining on it, or?
No, most of so this would come, Scheid Diesel makes this block.
Yep.
They set the deck plates, they set the sleeves in.
Okay.
They protrude a little bit. So yeah, your finished bore, everything, bore spacing, the bolt spacing, everything on the top end is going to stay the same.
Very good. Now going back to the crank and the billet block here, I think you mentioned there's a little difference in the mains with the billet block versus Kyle's engine using the girdle and whatnot, right?
Yep. if you want, do you want me to turn it over and we can kind of
Yeah, sure. We can take a peek at that.
take a. So these run a larger billet main cap that's also cross-bolted, kind of like a.
Yeah, you can.
Yep, you can see where the caps are cross-bolted from the side.
Very cool.
And as you can see, the caps are a little bit larger. They're taller, so they.
Yeah, it's a pretty big cap.
Yep, they come up that much farther. There's almost no sense in having a girdle on them.
Yeah.
We probably could, but you get to the point to where the main stud is just going to get super long. It's going to push your, like we were just talking, clearance. It's going to push your oil pan that much farther out. If we did want to use our girdle on these, we would have to probably manipulate them a little bit and take the step out of them, just flatten them the whole way across. And talking to Scheid, they haven't had any issues with them run, and I don't see any issues with this design.
Excellent.
We've got a couple of them that we've done, and well, I don't think we're gonna have any issues with them.
Yeah.
Pretty solid, as you can see.
Yeah.
Good setup.
So Dustin, I think we walked through the majority of the bottom end there, and we touched on a couple things with the roller cam and roller rocker setup. But how about some more of the valve train and the cylinder head on a build like this?
So on a build like this, same thing. We're going to go with a billet cylinder head, just a bulletproof. You're not going to have to worry about a crack in the casting, like as a recast or an aftermarket casting.
Yeah.
So we go with billet head, same thing, Inconel valves. We want a good valve. We don't want any valve train issues. Roller rockers, titanium retainers and keepers, lightweight, super strong. One of our spec dual valve spring setups, which same thing. Don't want any issues with valves or the springs.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, you got a little bit more to spend, but the reliability on the back end, something like this, you would have the same refresh interval.
A couple seasons.
Yeah. Every 2 seasons I would recommend. Most customers we recommend every 2 seasons.
Awesome.
But the thing is, year after year, this would come back and would be in about the same condition.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing you might have to do is replace the sleeve, put a new set of sleeves in it, new set of pistons. They get wore, ringlands start to wear. Other than that, it'd be a basic refresh, which is gaskets. We go through the cylinder head, new gaskets, rings, bearings, deglaze the cylinders, and then spec everything. Make sure your housing bores are still in spec. Yeah, other than that.
That's great. So again, it's a pretty durable build. Equal to or better than what Kyle's got going on there. So that's awesome to hear. Obviously we went through a couple of the differences and a couple similarities there. So Dustin, let's talk a little bit about just, how competitive this build will be out there in the Super Stock class. Kyle's got a build that is going to be in that top 5, top 3 for most pulls. Where does this billet setup get me?
This is going to put you in the #1 spot every night.
Nice.
Based on the driver.
Yeah.
Because this, like we talked earlier, it is.
It's not the engine's fault.
Yes. Yeah. This is 100% a driver's class, and most guys in Super Stock will tell you that. But if you get on a track and you have your tires set, everything's set right, you drive it right, everything feels good. Because when this is set on kill, you're going to be pretty close to 4,000 horse. 3,800, 4,000, 3,500, depending on how we want to have it set up for what your different customers in different parts of the world, country. Like up in Canada, they don't need anywhere near that much power. They can't. The tracks are sand, so they can't apply that much power. Down here, or where you guys are from, Ohio, that's one of the best states for truck pull. Like we just talked earlier, Bowling Green. I mean, that's you can put the pudding down in Bowling Green, and
Absolutely.
it's usually the horsepower is going to win. And if you
That's an
if you have,
impressive place.
yeah, if you have a good setup and you drove it right that night and everything, the truck laid down, it's yeah, this is going to put you on the podium every night.
So you mentioned, you know, I've got some horsepower room to play with depending on, you know, fueling and your tuning that night. Where do most guys kind of have that set? You know, are you setting it to that higher 5,000 horsepower mark? Or?
No, a lot of guys you don't want to set them on kill.
Yeah.
Stuff your life expectancy is you know, you're going to narrow that window.
You're asking for some issues.
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah. And so another thing we didn't talk about earlier was water injection. So both of these engines are going to run a water injection setup.
Okay.
If you happen to have a little bit of a little piece of dirt or something gets in a water injection nozzle, which is common, I mean, it can, and they don't atomize just right, then you have a cylinder that, you know, leans way out or runs way hot. You run them on kill, and you're going to burn you can burn a piston that night, or you can tear something up pretty easily. The other thing, like we just talked, was a lot of the tracks can't hold that much power, and the other thing, they're only allowed to weigh 7,500 pounds, so the power to weight to traction ratio just isn't quite there.
Yeah.
90% of the nights.
You got to have the right calculation.
Yes.
There. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it's feel. Like, this isn't a class if you've never truck pulled or you've never been into motorsports and you've never been around it. This isn't a class you just want to jump right. That would be like one day you want to start drag racing and you go get a top fuel dragster. It's just not, you know, that's probably a recipe for disaster.
For sure.
But there's some people that they jump right in them and from a lower class, and they take right off. A lot of it's feel.
Yeah.
You know, how it feels in the seat, you know, and hand-eye coordinate, you know, just how your throttle hand works and your clutch foot, you know, and getting everything just right.
Yeah. Very good. Well, glad to hear that this is again gonna perform well, you know, as well as I'm gonna need it to. It's really on me as driver to.
Now you guys can battle it out on the track.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know who the better driver is between the two of us. I guess we'll have to figure that out.
Yeah.
But very cool. So, Dustin, a couple other questions here. You know, we mentioned the dry sump versus wet sump debate, and it kind of just depends on, you know, what room you have there. But, you know, I noticed the AMSOIL back here. Is that, you running that same 50 weight in a build like this?
Yeah.
Like Kyle's?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
These would both be bearing clearances are going to be about the same. This being an aluminum block, I don't think we're going to have to change much. We've asked Scheid about that. Clearances is still around that same, you know, around that same mark. So yeah, I'm going to leave straight 50 weight oil. Yep, awesome. That's what you'd be running. And
then, Dustin, I wanted, you know, for our viewers at home, you know, when we start talking about some of these builds that are 80K, over 100K like this, you know, I'm sure a lot of them are like, you know, where's all that money going? Can you talk on this build in particular? Obviously, the billet block is a huge chunk of that, but what else is kind of those one or two other big dollar items?
So the biggest ticket, obviously, the block.
You mentioned the billet head. That's got to be significant.
The billet head, billet block, the injection pump. That's a big one.
Yeah.
And two turbos.
Yeah.
So just those handful of things right there is
that's
a big.
The bulk of it.
That's not quite 3/4. That's pretty close to what you're spending.
Yeah.
The meat and potatoes, everything else, rods, cam, pistons, all the accessory stuff to put on it, the oiling system, the water injection, that adds up too.
Yeah.
But the biggest ticket items, this block, the cylinder head, and the injection pump, those are going to be your biggest three.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Now, this might be kind of a dumb question at this point with a build like this and billet pieces, but, you know, is there another level to get to if I wanted to do anything more, or is this really that upper echelon that?
Maybe someday.
Yeah, you gotta keep engineering it, right?
Yeah. At this point, like I said, until we're allowed to alter the bore spacing.
Yeah. This is kind of where it.
Yeah. The only thing as common rail, like electronic injection, as common rail technology catches up, I could see that becoming a thing in like super stock truck pulling. The problem is controlling the injectors to get the amount of fuel, because in this class it's all fuel and air. You can run water, straight water, no nitrous. To get the amount of fuel, the fuel quantity you need in that period of time at that RPM to sustain for that duration of time without having an injector have a mishap for just a second, because that's all it takes to tear them up, burn one up. It's going to get to that point one day, but your base, the long block, would roughly stay the same. So you would still, this block, at that point it'd be a 24 valve head. We could do a common rail 12 valve head, but it would be a 24. But then you get into a whole nother can of worms on the fuel system. Now you got pumps, injectors, the wiring, a control system for it. Whether you're running a standalone, there's a couple different companies you could use, but that's down the line.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Well, Dustin, again, I appreciate you walking me through this awesome super stock Billet 6.7 here. This thing's going to be really sweet, and I appreciate you giving us the details on it.
Yep, it'll get the job done.
Yeah, so now I got to go chat with Kyle here. We're going to compare and contrast these two builds, kind of break them down in a couple different segments, and see who kind of came out on top here. So stay tuned. All right, guys, so we just wrapped up going through each of our builds with Dustin, and both going to be some awesome builds. Sure. Obviously both budgets are on the high side, so you're going to get a nice engine either way. But we do want to break them down here and compare and contrast with a couple different parameters. Kyle, we're going to start with the dollars per horsepower. You crunched the numbers on that one.
Yeah, pretty close. Honestly, very comparable. Just a dollar difference between the two, with a budget of $80,000 for the mild build, getting around 3,000 horsepower. You're looking at about $26 per horsepower. For the wild build, you got a budget at $115,000. Horsepower is going to come out around 4,500. It comes out to $25 per horsepower. So wild build gets the check mark there.
Awesome. Yeah, like you said, very close, but check mark for wild. All right, let's talk about competitiveness. Both builds going to be really competitive out there for a sled pull. You got that top 5, top 3 spot on any given night. Right. But me with the Billet Cummins build there, that's, should put me in the top spot as long as I don't mess it up behind the wheel.
Yeah, need a good driver for it to take first place.
Well, in both cases, you got to drive. The driver's going to determine placement there for the most part. But with what I've got under the hood there, I'm going to be a little bit more competitive than your build. So the Wild gets the competitive check mark. Let's talk about durability.
This one was pretty close too. I mean, Dustin recommended for both engines getting a fresh up every 2 years or so. However, he did mention in the mild build 3 to 4 seasons tops with the mild build. Again, you're not working with the Billet block. You're working with the original factory block. That Billet block is just so strong. It can last, as he said, when you freshen it up, it's going to look almost exactly the same on the outside when you bring it back in for that fresh up.
Well, yeah, and same with the Billet head versus the cast head. So just a couple more components that are going to wear quicker on your side. So yeah, durability is going to go to the Wild build as well. Now let's talk a little bit about the ease of upgrading the engine. Here, my Billet build is already at that top echelon of components and things that you're going to be able to do with the engine in terms of horsepower as well. So there's not a ton that we can do given rules and engineering. Some of that stuff is going to have to change before, I can really do much else.
Right.
Kyle, on the mild side, excuse me, you got a couple options.
Yeah, compound the turbo would be the first one, and then kind of just working up towards that wild build. Obviously, if you're going to keep the original block there for a season or 2, 3, or 4, just put things on there that would make it closer to that wild build. Again, starting with that turbo. So a little bit more ease of upgrade there on the mild build to get the check mark for the mild build on that one.
All right, guys, so going through those few parameters, the wild build takes the victory this time, 3-1 against the mild build. But again, nothing to take away from that mild build. That thing's going to be awesome.
For sure.
We're just kind of, comparing and contrasting them here. And obviously, Billet engines are pretty phenomenal engines. And we're both going to be excited to go compete in that super stock class.
Yeah, tons of fun, tons of power, very competitive engines.
Absolutely. But guys, we appreciate all you watching at home, checking out this episode of Mild vs. Wild. We want to thank our sponsor, AMSOIL. And of course, we want to thank Dustin and everyone here at Apex Diesel for having us in the shop and getting to check out everything that they're doing. So make sure you guys check out that stuff as well. And as always, make sure you're checking out enginebuildermag.com for more great engine content. We'll see you guys next time.